All land belongs to the government.
Yeah.
Wow.
So whatever it is you buy, remember that there's a term on it. I think it's more of a chicken and egg situation, which should come first. Okay. Cash flow is king. Not having that puts one at the risk of just dreaming and speculating. I think that poverty, the statements and the sentiments about we they suffer for Nigeria, I think it's just something that people like to say because everybody's saying it, right? But in truth, we're not that poor. Lagos specifically, we always have issues around title or claim of ownership. The bigger questions even around business is that I think it also helps people develop a certain sense of complexity.
In the current situation of the economy now, we want to actually pick which is the smarter decision to make right now. Buy land or start a business. And we have a chronic financial literacy delivery, if that makes sense, he's looking to help us actually decide on what path to take today, and I hope this conversation will be of value to the audience. We have Mr. Dipo Adesida, C.O.O. of Verdant Zeal Group. Mr. Dipo, welcome to Everyday Money Matters.
Thank you very much.
He's glad to have you here. He's a team land guy.
Yeah. In fact, I'm trying to raise 10 million. Let's go and buy all the lands in Oshogbo.
With 10 million being you're a very smart guy. Don't worry, I know you win it.
Buy Oshogbo. I hope you're not from there.
Or else he bought his land. Okay, so welcome again, Mr. Dipo. But before we even start to break it down, right? He's team land, I'm team business, right? Okay. But I want you to give us your view. Answer the question first, land or business, then we'll break it down from there. So in this current situation, where do you feel anyone should actually go to? Which side should the average person go to?
Okay, all right. Thanks again. So I don't think it's an either or situation. I think it's more of a chicken and egg situation, which should come first, because they're both interconnected. I mean, to buy land, you need some form of capital. It may not be cash, but you need something that you can purchase the land in exchange for something else. In some people's cases, because they have goodwill, they don't necessarily have to put cash down. It can be their credibility to say, hey, I'm locking X number of plots or acres or hectares, for a future, promise to pay. And for some other people, they have to actually get the cash. But I think that because we're talking about Nigeria as it is today, I think that the chicken or the egg will be to have some form of cash flow. Cash flow will be extremely important. And in my opinion, I think that what cash flow does is that it helps you build some kind of pipeline that almost ensures that you have liquidity, because that liquidity sort of gives you confidence, the confidence to broker deals, to have conversations and all whatnot. So I would think that it's more of a chicken and egg situation, and the chicken or the egg, I'm not sure which now.
No, go on.
should be that, you should have some kind of, cash flow business that allows you to maybe on a periodic basis, not necessarily every day, but at least constantly having some kind of inflow. What business also does is that business helps you build a network, because, and I'll give you a typical example of what happens in the market. If you go to the market day one, you meet many people. Everybody's calling, hey, my customer, come and buy from me. But if you go to that same market 4 or 5 times, you're likely to buy from almost the same set of people. And what will happen is that person who sells jeans to you or sells whatever to you, at some point can trust you enough to give you credit. Yes. So you don't necessarily have to go to that market with cash. You can say, my guy, just give me till next week. I'll pick 5 jeans. Next week, I'll send the money to you. What business has done for you in that case is that it's giving you some form of credit or credibility, which you can then, again, the cash you're not paying in that instant, you can use it to do something else. And with business, the more quote unquote credit or credibility that you have, the wider your network, the more you're able to cross-sell opportunities between people, which gives you then that quote unquote quantum of funds that you might need to then, let's say, invest in land. So I would say that the egg in this situation, since we're using chicken and egg, is that perhaps a business, yeah, because that gives you cash flow.
All right, but look, I'm Tim Land. So
Yes.
Okay.
We're being a bit abstract with our conversation, but now let's make it more. Let's use a case study.
Okay.
So, knowing that the stock exchange, the NGX, is doing good in the last years, that's an investment, right? If I'm right.
Yeah, it's an investment channel.
Yeah, it is.
So, would you advise I have like 2 million or 3 million? Would you advise I put that in the NGX, or I go to somewhere around Lakwe and get a land, knowing very well that in about a year or so, looking at the state of development there, that land the cost might double. Which one in this very practical case would you advise?
Again, chicken and egg. Because I mean, if you look at the Nigerian exchange, right, that's your investment there is not a single investment. You probably might want to diversify it, meaning that your returns are not going to be fixed. You're probably going to have a range of returns. So some stock might perform very well, some might be, basically marginal, some might be suboptimal. So if you mix all of those returns on investment, you get an average, right? Now, if you put that in land, in Lakwe or wherever it is, yes, there's the potential for a quick turnaround in terms of how that money can double. But my bigger question, I think it's not like I'm saying land is definitely good if you have the capital or the credibility, right? But the question is, once you make that sale and you have that cash with you, what then do you do with it? Do you put it back into another land? And by the time you're doing that, you're doing business, really. So you've
move from
land to business.
Yeah. So really, it's for me. I would say that Nigeria as it is today, the money is in the hands of people, and the more people that have your money that you can meet to say, I have this thing that I'm doing. Hey, do you want to invest in it? Do you want to buy it? Do you want to patronize? Gives you more opportunity for cash flow. Land typically most times are single transactions. You buy, you keep, you sell. It's one. You have the money, but once you have the money, your mind starts to go into, okay, what then do I do with it? And if you're not very savvy in terms of investment or knowing how to,
married.
I spend everything.
Then you get into the CBEXs or things like that where you just want a quick return. And so I feel business helps to train people on how to be, on the process of actually growing wealth. Even land itself, buying land is a kind of business, but because our context today is about business, I think it helps people to understand the different seasons or cycles in business. The importance of knowing how to collect your money, the importance of understanding that some will go bad, the importance of understanding that even in business there's credit. Not everybody will pay you upfront. So how do you get your own working capital to fund maybe a particular project that you want to do it?
Even run your business.
Yeah, all of those things. And then the bigger questions even around business that I think also helps people develop a certain sense of complexity, which is that you then start understanding the importance of things like having a registered business, doing your filing for your annual returns, taxes, because those things then prepare you for the bigger conversation, which is when there are now serious grants or single digits loans that are available. You would have built yourself to that point. But when we just say land, it's good, but you have to approach it, I think, from a perspective of doing it as a business, not just as one. I bought for 2 million, I sold for 5 million. Now that you have 5 million, what next? Is that what next question?
Dipo has finally wrapped you up into bringing your land into business. Yes. So if you are team land people, right? If you are doing land, no problem. But make sure you do it as a business. So thank you for that. I really appreciate the way you married approaching land as a business as against just buying land and waiting for it to appreciate, right? But, acquiring land now, for instance, comes with a lot of issues, all them omonidi, what they call them, omoniles, and if you don't even fence your land, for instance, now you just abandon it, come back next year, somebody has fenced it and someone else has taken it. You understand? And also the likes of the risk of your house being demolished because the allocation is not, which you see every day. You understand? So for someone who is looking team land person,
Team
right?
land, okay.
How would you say? Let's still just focus on the state of the mind of the person that will pick the land, right? How would you advise the person goes about it really?
So I would advise that because in everything, in business and investing, there are things they call the fundamentals.
Yeah.
So they are the first principles of everything. Verification. If you're going to do any kind of business or any kind of speculation, you need to be sure that what you're dealing with is authentic, right? Yeah. So issues around land in this context in Nigeria, in Lagos specifically, we'll always have issues around title or claim of ownership. They are real. They are not imagined. That you deal with an omonile is a fact. So to assume that because you've bought it in some place and you'll be shielded from those issues is like looking for fool's gold. One has to be sure that those things are covered. Now, there are hacks to it. Some of which is that you can now buy through a scheme, a program, maybe and the developer already has, they've gone ahead, they've paid the price, they've dealt with all this. Yes, they faced all that for you. So you can do that. That also comes with its own risks.
An added cost too.
Of course, there's a cost for it because someone is providing a service that you are enjoying. Or in some cases, they've already built the infrastructure like the roads, the drainages, the electricity. So if you're buying into that kind of thing, there's a cost connected to it. If you want to do it by yourself, then you need to be sure that you're ready to invest in the learning curve because dealing with omonile there's no playbook.
There's no playbook for that.
There's no playbook. You cannot determine the number of them that you'll be dealing with. You cannot determine.
So
that in itself comes with its own attendant attention to the business, and which is sort of maybe how we're going to land this session. That if you're going to do it, you have to think of it as a business. If you're doing anything as business, there's in the field of there's what they call the pestle analysis. So you have to think of the political environment, you have to think of the economic environment, the social environment, the technological advancements, the ecological impact, and the legal framework. All those things, all those things come to play. So even if it's land that you're doing, look at it through that prism to say, how am I able to deal? If you can't deal by yourself, then maybe make sure that you're in an ecosystem where those things have been dealt with, or they're at least actively dealing with them so that you don't fall prey to. But clearly land, especially in certain areas that have high growth potential, it shows great appreciation. Sometimes within a period of maybe 3 to 5 years, you can get almost 5 to 6 times the initial investment that you put in. But of course,
you run it well, though.
But there are always risks. There are risks to everything. And in the investment principle is high risk, high return. Low risk, low return. So if there's potentially very high return, there is also the potential high risk of losing it.
Still trying to...
Because I want somebody to get married. You said high risk, high return. Is marriage, could marriage be an investment? Maybe we should even have it.
We can bring this in. We can bring it in. It's still business, right? It's transaction. Marriage is an investment for life.
It is an investment.
You are the investment. You are the return on the investment. So it's crazy. And just to make...
Sorry, as I say, marriage is the only place where they give you the certificate before you start. Sorry about
my goodness. It was good to chip that in. I mean, we're lighting it up a bit. But, okay, so in order to still appease to Kayode Team Land, right? We've already established how the average Team Land person should approach processing land, right? Now let's go to business, right? I think business is pretty straightforward to a certain degree, but we'll trash that out. Well, let's focus on someone that wants to start a real estate business, so someone that wants to that sees it from the business point of view first, towards purchasing of land or developing, or generally buying land and reselling or building or whatever. How should that be approached to? I think it's the business side pre, I guess. I don't know if that question makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean it does make sense, and we'll go back to chicken and egg, which is that if I see this as a business, then a few things must be in place. One is that there's an opportunity. There's clearly going to be a demand for it. Yeah. There is future growth potential, and then there is also one is also sure that the things that make for the risk factors are understood. Maybe not completely mitigated, but at least you understand. With land specifically, and in a place like Lagos, you have to be you need to know who the players are. All the government agencies that are responsible for land.
Housing policy.
Yeah, all of them, and Lagos State has quite a number of them. Just a few days ago, I was watching. There's this guy Scott Iguma who calls out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was watching.
Yes,
yeah,
I know that
he
guy.
was on Arise TV, and then the Labka GM and one of the special advisors for special advice to the governor on something. The Lagos has what they call EGIS, so it's sort of a geographic mapping, system where they're trying to then make sure that once you put in the coordinates of your land, it will bring out who owns it, if there are any encumbrances on it. So if you're going into that kind of business, you need to be aware of what developments are happening. What's the government doing? What is the future plan for that space? Because you might all land belongs to the government.
Yeah.
Wow.
So whatever it is you buy, remember that there's a term on it. That area, it might be a reserved area for greenery, for passage of water. Those things are important. Now, the government doesn't always have all its ideas at once. Sometimes a new government comes and says, okay, hey, we should do this. So when one has to be mindful of those things. And I think that in Nigeria, land ownership is maximum of 99 years. All land belongs to the government.
Yeah.
Wow.
So whatever it is you buy, remember that there's a term on it. That at some point that clock is going to.
So what do we then own? If after 99 years, you buy the land 2 billion and 99 years is.
Well, 99 years is enough time to recoup your
So what about generational? I'm big on generational.
Nigeria is not even 99 years.
You can imagine. Before that time, somebody will your children will have sold the land or the property.
My child, by the grace of God, when I build I'll say palace. Never say my child. I'll come back.
No, but I always talk about that 99-year thing. I think, okay, let me not bring out that country. Let's focus on that 99 years. And I always say, okay, in 99 years, what happens? Because I think you have the option of renewing. It's not that it automatically reverts. You might lose the right, but you have like the right to of first refusal. So that kind of thing. So if you meet a greedy family, you bought the land or the property on the 98th year,
you're in trouble.
And you're not aware of it. And you paid so much amount in the 99th year.
But shouldn't it switch since it's a new person? Shouldn't another 99 years start over once you purchase from them?
Well, I don't know. Maybe except you bought it from the people.
We need to look for somebody that is at least 100 years old. The person can confirm for.
Yeah. But I think but just as we were speaking, the basis is that, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. All land belongs to the government. All land. Wow. So you can go to court and fight, but the government, if they want to do a railway, that railway will happen. We'll talk about who's
like what happened to the
landmark. Yeah, we'll talk about whose ox got God later, but government owns all the land. So those are the risks that one has to be very mindful of. You might have a great plan, great layout, great everything, but the government owns all the land essentially. So again, this goes back to the issues around your network. Making sure that you have the right people in your team. Because sometimes those political influences can affect the quality of your.
I mean, all what you said, it just shows whichever side of the fence you are, you need to really be knowledgeable about it. You need to do proper research, right? And like you just said in regards to approaching buying land as a business, right? With everything you said, right, a lot of developers actually don't even follow that approach, and they end up building on lands that shouldn't even be, housing properties in the first place. They use substandard goods, some standard equipment, some everything to build houses. The houses are getting smaller by the day. I mean, a baby's room now is more a 2-bed apartment. Now you see one average room, then the second room is almost a store, right? And yet they're not overpriced at the end of the day, right? So I mean, people, the consumer ends up paying double or even more for less. You understand? Because a lot of policies and standards weren't, adhered to during the process. But all in all, what I see here is business wins.
Well, yes,
business.
Yes, business is cash flow.
Yes,
and cash flow is king. Cash flow is king. Once you have cash, and let me tell you a funny, it's a joke. They say don't be saying it's a funny joke. Hopefully you guys will laugh. So let's laugh now. Just in case. So there's a story of a gentleman who, the story about a gentleman who was looking for money to start a business, and he was in a park, and while he was there, a guy came and he met some guy who claimed to be John D. Rockefeller, and the guy said, "Oh, you need money for your business?" The guy said, "No problem, I'll give you the money." So he wrote a check and gave it to the guy. It was for $1 million, but he told the guy that only cash this check if you need the money. Okay, don't do it if you don't need it. So this guy takes that check and goes to start a business. He doesn't cash it. He does the business with the mindset that he has $1 million to cash if he needs it. And so he went 1 year, the business did very well, didn't even need to cash the check. So a year later, he went by the same park and met this, Rockefeller again. I said, well, thank you, sir, for your support. Here's the check. Only to find out that this Johnny Rockefeller and a madman, So the money wasn't even real, but it was the confidence that he had. Yes, that, you have $1 million, don't worry. So that confidence gave him the ability, the full chest to go out there and get stuff done. I think that's what cash sort of does. It gives us the confidence to take risks. It gives us confidence to say, you know what, how much are you selling? Give me five there, because you know that there's something that backs your statement. Not having that puts one at the risk of just dreaming and speculating. So my candid advice would be that in Nigeria as we have it now, with our population, with the very strong consumerist vibe that we have, because we buy. Even with the way everything is,
you still see some people spending, and you're wondering how on earth.
People spend a lot, and again, I wasn't sure if this was appropriate for this show, but I think that poverty, the statements and the sentiments about we they suffer for Nigeria, I think it's just something that people like to say because everybody's saying it, right? But in truth, we're not that poor, because if we were that poor in the 70s and 80s, while our parents were going under military rule, we complained. We complained about everything. Complained about price of rice, price of fuel, everything. In the 90s, same thing too. When whoever was president, we've been complaining about, but if you go for parties, the small chops is not diminishing. The range of food we get isn't reducing. People are still...
They don't spray money like this anymore.
Yes,
they throw them in big boxes.
So it looks like this whole thing of with a software is just, it's like a badge you want to wear so that people will say, yeah, you know, yes. But in truth, we're a nation and the people who we are resourceful. We know when we need to get things done, we get those things done. But I guess that whole thing of with a software is just so that, don't beg me before you ask me for anything. Let me just tell you up front that, you know, I don't have. Yeah, but we have a lot that we can do to really strengthen these institutions that we have in terms of providing value, in terms of, you know, being at the forefront of doing things right and doing them well. And this is where I think that, you know, our conversation on business, because as you do a business, there is what then happens that you then have competition. You've been doing it, maybe you do it for a year or two and you've been like raking out cash, but competition comes. And what competition does is that it makes you sit up. It makes you ask, how can I do this better? You know, and if there's competition, then the quality of services generally increases. You know, and then that's where we're then building what is a strong ecosystem of better services.
And, competitive prices as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, we're out of time, Mr. Dipo. Thank you very, very much for shedding light. I really like that madman joke. I'll call it a madman joke. You call it a funny joke. I'll call it a madman joke. So definitely for the audience, like you heard it from, I'll call Mr. Dipo the horse's mouth, right? We heard from the horse's mouth. Definitely purchasing land is good, but cash flow exists, right? You need cash flow to be able to even buy your land in the first place. So invest in yourself, put in the work, put in the sacrifices, start a business or at least a steady source of income that you can raise towards buying land if that's your preference, or build a business that can last you the test of time. So after 99 years, you'll be able to repurchase your land. and we'll call it a day, guys. See you next week. Have a nice day. Bye.